This week's cup of cocoa and chat theme: retirement, reality, and readiness. The theme this week is retirement, reality, and readiness. This podcast episode topic 62 or 67: what they're not explaining clearly. Okay? So, welcome to Cup of Cocoa and Chat. I am Princess, and this is your space to sip, share, and start your day with intention. Excuse me. Encouragement and something warm for the soul. Today's conversation is for educational purposes only, not financial advice. I'm simply sharing information and lived experience. Retirement isn't just about turning 62 or 67. It's about readiness, emotionally, financially, and mentally. See, I just turned 62 in January. And let me tell you, my timeline all last week has been flooded with retirement videos. Some people are celebrating early retirement at 62, while others are saying they have no choice but to work until they reach the age of 67. And in the background of it all, there's this quiet anxiety. What if the retirement age moves to 70 for everyone? So instead of fear, today we're choosing clarity. Instead of panic, we're choosing preparation. This isn't about rushing into a decision. It's about understanding your reality and being ready. Okay? So let's get into a little bit of Social Security facts. So once I realized my timeline was flooded or inundated with retirement videos, I knew I had to slow down and really understand what was facts or what was factual, what was fear, and what actually applies to me. Because Social Security isn't one size fits all. Okay? Here are a few truths we need to understand calmly. First, full retirement age. Full retirement age, which is FRA. You'll see that acronym a lot. FRA. 62 versus 67, and maybe versus 70. So you can start collecting Social Security at 62. You can start collecting Social Security at 62. Keep in mind, it is reduced, and it is reduced permanently, which means if you take it at 62, it does not increase when you reach full retirement age. Okay? So whatever you take at 62 is your allotment. You do get the COLA, the increases every year. But when you turn 67, which is the full retirement age, it does not increase just because you turn the full retirement age, because it's a penalty. So whatever you took at 62 is what you will receive. It only goes up with those yearly increases, okay? That's why I say it's reduced and it's permanently, okay? Full retirement age for many of us is 67. 67. And if you wait until 70, your benefit will increase even more. Okay? But here's the truth. Not everyone can wait until 67 or reaching full retirement age or reaching FRA. Okay? Now, the last of the baby boom generation turns 62 in 2026. So the last of the baby boom generation will be turning 62 this year. Okay? Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. So this is a major milestone year for a lot of baby boomers. Okay? I am also a baby boomer, so I turned 62 in January. Another truth. You can work while receiving or collecting your Social Security. Okay? But with everything, it carries a caveat. If you collect early, I'm sorry, and continue working, there are income limits. Okay? For instance, if you turn 62 and you decide you need or you want to take your retirement and you are working, you can do so. However, there is an income limit and it's a little over 24,000. I'm not sure of the exact amount, but it's 24,000 and some odd dollars yearly. If you are making over that, you still can collect at 62. You still can collect at 67. Okay? But there is an income level, and calculations are based on that. Okay? Now, if you make above a certain amount, your benefits can be reduced temporarily, which means that if you take it at 62 and you're making over $24,000, there is a penalty. Social Security will calculate it accordingly. However, when you reach the age of 67, you are entitled to an adjustment. Okay? That's because you're working. All right? And you are still investing in the system as opposed to not investing in the system and taking it at 62, if that makes sense, okay? So that part alone makes some people nervous, right? That part alone makes people nervous. Social Security calculates your benefits based on your highest 35 years of earning, not just the last two. So there is some talk going around that is calculated based on your last 2 years of earning, but no, it's 35. It's based on the highest 35 years of earning. That's why that makes it different than if you're not working. Okay? Now, spousal benefits can also come into play. The higher earning spouse must file first. Social Security pays your own benefit first. And if your spousal amount is higher because he or she is the higher wage earner, they adjust it upward. So I believe it's like 50%. Okay? Now, I advise you all to do your own research when determining what is the best age for you. A lot of you may not even be close to 62, but this is information you should know to prepare yourself. Because remember, it's about readiness, being prepared. All right? Now let's get into cost of living adjustment, which is COLA. We've all heard of COLA, cost of living adjustment. Yes, there are annual increases to help with inflation, but inflation often rises faster than the adjustment. So planning matters. Keep that in mind. Planning matters. Okay? And healthcare becomes a major part of retirement planning. Okay? For 2026, the standard medical, the standard Medicare Part B premium is about $202.90, average 203 per month. Okay? In 2026. And that is up from 185 last year. So it was 185 for the Medicare Part B. It was 185 last year, right? And it's been 185 for quite a little bit because I remember when I worked for Social Security. I'm sorry, for social services. I'm talking about Social Security. When I worked at social services, when they came in to apply for assistance with paying the premium, it was 185, and I retired in 2017. Okay. Now, if you are a higher income earner, that premium can be much higher. Okay, but the average is 202.90, and if we round it up, we're talking about 203 per month. Okay. Most people don't pay a premium for Part A, but Part D, which is the drug plan specifically, Part D of Medicare, drug plans vary depending on the coverage you choose. So there is a cost for Part D, but it varies depending on the plan that you yourself choose. So even with Social Security increases, your expenses can increase too. And that's why saving is so important. Okay? Whether you're expecting a pension, Social Security, or both, you still need personal savings. You still need personal savings. So treat your savings as if you're not going to receive any additional assistance in your retirement. So your focus should strongly be about your savings for your retirement. Don't base it on the fact that, oh, I will receive Social Security or I will receive pension as well. Okay? Treat your savings solely on retirement and what you are comfortable saving for your retirement, because it is very important that you save. Okay? I don't want you to have to worry about the additional income, worry about that savings as your primary income for your retirement, because that preparation gives you peace, right? It determines if you have to go back to work, right? It determines if you have to use your income for some kind of emergency, um, all the things, vacation, whatever, because when we retire, we think about traveling and different things like that. Keep in mind, government benefits are support, but your savings are stability. That's why it's so important to focus on the savings. Which brings me to something very personal. Okay, so this is my personal testimony. I've worked since 1981. Okay, I was 17 years old. I graduated high school at 17. I tried college and I had to quickly go back to work and work from the time that I started in 81 and 82, and part of 81 was strictly about going to college. And in 83, I went back to work and worked until I retired. Okay. So eventually I did go back to college, but only after I was able to sustain income and life for myself and my child. Okay. Because stability came first, then education for me. Okay. And I'm blessed to have had the option to have a job that gave me a pension at the end of 30 years. And that's something I do not take lightly, right? But I also prepared over the years. I didn't start early because I was ignorant to financial literacy in my 20s. Hell, if I'm honest, in my 30s, right? But I prepared over the years, contributing to retirement accounts with job related matches like 401k and 457. And I had a little savings, which gave me a cushion when I retired. I paid my bills off prior to retirement. When I got tired and I knew that I wanted to just stop working, when it was time for me to leave my career, I started preparing with paying my bills off. Okay. So when I retired, I was not at the age of retirement, but I had years of service since I worked my job for 45 years. So I had years before age. Okay. So I was able to have a pension at retirement. And I got yearly increases, which is the COLA with the pension. Okay. But here's the part people don't always say out loud. When you retire, you finally have time, you travel, you shop a little more because you're home more, and you live, right? And that part caused me to go back to work from 2018 until 2024 just to supplement my savings and my pension because things were getting tight. I had not ran out of money, but for the extra things that I wanted to do, I had to go back to work. Now I didn't work that whole period, that whole 6 years. However, I worked enough for if it was a project I wanted to do, if it was a trip I wanted to take, if there was just extra money I needed, I worked. So I had several jobs. I worked with children, um, which my passion has always been about helping people. So I was still able to reach back and help. Okay. But it wasn't because I failed, but because life adjusts. Life adjusts, and I had to adjust with it. But before I turned 62, I was approved for SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Income. Now, I wasn't able to take that when I retired, right? Because in the time that I retired up until I applied, my illnesses became um, chronic, right? And that was one of the reasons why I retired because I was getting sick a lot, but it hadn't come to, it had not um, come to more chronic than it became at that time, if that makes sense. Um, and when you're retiring from a job, um, it's time consuming to apply for disability, right? Um, it's a lot of red tape, a lot of red tape. But I didn't feel that it was needed at that time. So there's that. Um, so the process was not easy, at the time that I had to apply. It would have been more difficult prior years. But at the time that I applied, it was not easy. So if SSDI had not come through for me, I would have requested my Social Security at 62. It would have been no doubt, right? Because if I could be honest, my decision wouldn't have come from panic, but my decision to take it at 62 after working 45 plus years, right? If I hadn't not have been approved for disability, I would have taken it at 62 because the the real truth is if I had if I had claimed the benefits at 62 instead of waiting until 67, over time I would have left nearly $100,000 on the table. So if I had waited, if the disability had not entered, my decision would have been to take it at 62, because from 62 to 67, that's 5 years. And I would have nearly been leaving $100,000 or more on the table from that time span. And I was not willing to do that. So I would have taken it at 62 without a doubt. Because when you've worked that long, you start asking yourself different questions. Is it time to rest? Is my health cooperating, which mine wasn't? And what matters most now? So all of that would have come to play if I had not gotten as sick as I did. I would have definitely taken my allotment at 62. So yes, 45 years of work, or 45 plus years of work, that reality alone could have caused me to take my allotment at 62 instead of waiting until 67. But here's the wisdom behind that. Just because you can take it at 62 doesn't always mean you should. Because remember, I said Social Security is not a one size fits all, right? It's lifestyle based decision, health based decision. All of those things come to play. So it depends on your health, your savings, your pension, and most importantly, your peace. Remember, everyone do not have a pension or savings to rely on. So determining whether 62 is the better time for you or 67 is a major decision for anyone. And that's why these decisions must be personal and not pressured. And with the state of our retirement system and the Social Security and our government overseeing it, a lot of factors come into play. A lot of factors, a lot, right? So the emotional side of the retirement decision, right? This is where it gets real for some. Retirement isn't just math. It's identity, it's health, it's pride, it's fear, it's asking yourself, can I afford to stop? Can I afford not to? And for many people, that decision is emotional before it's financial. You can't plan retirement without considering your health, your stress levels, and your capacity. Okay? Now, let's talk about a few important details that don't always trend on social media or the news, right? Let's talk about the maximum benefit at full retirement age, which is FRA. FRA, maximum benefit at full retirement age. Not everyone qualifies for the maximum Social Security benefit at full retirement age. Okay? That maximum amount requires consistently high earnings over many years. So when people compare numbers online, remember those numbers are based on lifetime earnings. That high 35 years of earnings. Okay? Not your last two, but the highest in the 35 years of earnings. So remember, a lot of people don't have 35 years of high earnings at time of retirement, whether they're 62 or 67. Some people have not worked that long. Um, so all of the numbers are designed for your work history when Social Security is looking at your allotment. So not every person are alike. Each is individualized to you. That's why I said at the very beginning, it's not a one size fits all. All right, so the next is taxable earnings cap. There's also something called the taxable earnings cap. That means income above a certain level is not taxed for Social Security. And that's where debates about fairness and long-term fundings often begin. So I'm not here to debate policy, just to make you aware. Okay, so we're not going to spend much time on that. And this conversation isn't about SSI, which is totally different. We're only talking about Social Security and or SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Income. All right. So the next thing we're going to speak on is SSDI plus substantial gainful activity, which is SGA. The acronym is SGA. SSDI plus substantial gainful activity. So for those receiving SSDI, there's something called substantial gainful activity, or the acronym SGA. That's the monthly income limit you can earn while receiving disability benefits. So you can work while receiving disability income as well as Social Security. If you earn above the amount consistently, it can affect your eligibility. So working while disabled must be handled carefully. SSDI has no limits on unearned income, and unearned income is self-employment. Okay, so that is something totally different. SSDI has no limits on unearned income, but earned income that you get from working, there is limits, and you have to be careful with that. But you can work, but you have to report it to Social Security so that they can calculate your benefit accordingly. Okay? Now, Medicare Part B premium increases. We touched a little bit on the premium, but I just want you to remember Medicare Part B premiums are deducted directly from many Social Security checks. So when premiums increase, your take-home amount can feel smaller. And if you do not have savings and you don't have a pension and you just have security income, when those premiums go up, it affects your income. If you take it at 62, you don't have that premium because you're not 65. Medicare comes in at 65. So if you're taking that income at 62, just know at age 65, when Medicare comes in, there will be a premium that you have to pay, which means there will be money deducted, whatever that a premium is. And as of 2026, it's $202.90. Don't know what it will be when you turn 65 if you decide to take it at 62. Okay? But at age 65 is when Medicare comes in. Okay? Now, if you're 62, 60, 59, 58, and you were found and you're receiving Social Security because you were found disabled, your Medicare is already approved based on whatever date. And I don't know what determines because by the time I applied for disability, I was approved for Social Security 1 month, and I believe it was 6 months after is when my Medicare came into place. And I'm still dealing with the Medicare because there's so many things they don't tell you about Medicare. Um, so I'm still dealing with Medicare, and I already had Blue Cross and Blue Shield, right? But once I became disabled and Medicare came into play, Blue Cross and Blue Shield dropped my pharmacy plan, and I had to pick that up with Medicare. So a whole additional conversation, right? An additional conversation, and that still got me in a whirl spin. I'm trying to figure all of that out right now, but that's a lot, right? So taking it at 62, then Medicare comes in at 65. That premium is going to be deducted straight out of that Social Security. And here's a fact. Here's a fact from me, from my social services days. When you get your Social Security, and then a few months, a year, 2, 3 down the line, Medicare creeps in, that's not an expense you are looking for. And a lot of times when Medicare comes in, they come in and they snatch all of the premiums. So you could start getting that benefit in year 1. Here comes year 3, and then you become eligible for Medicare. And it was the beginning of that year 3. Social Security is going to take all 6 months of the premium at one time, right? Because it's always a delay. And those are the people I had to deal with during my social services days, because our elderly population would come in and say, "Hey, I've been getting my Social Security for a couple of years, and now that I'm 65, I'm eligible for Medicare." And Social Security took 4 months of premium, 4 months of premium. So that was 185 back then, right? Can't remember what it was before that. And if they're taking 4 months at one time, think of the surprise that happens, because A lot of them weren't getting pensions and didn't have savings. They were only getting Social Security. And that is their fixed income. And here comes Social Security say, I'm taking 4, 5, 6 months of Medicare because you became eligible 6 months ago, but we were delayed. So we taking it now, today. And you've already allotted that income to pay for certain expenses. And now you have no money. So you got to come to or go to social services and apply for what's called QMB. That's the acronym, but it's Qualified Medical Beneficiary to help you with that premium. Now, once you're approved for that through social services, which is also income based, but if you're approved for it, I should say, then Social Security has to pay you back all of that money that they took. But it doesn't come back automatic. I mean, well, it comes back automatically. It does because the two systems, social services will talk with Social Security through the programs, right? But it does not always happen overnight with you getting your money back. So you do get the money back, but it will not be right away. So that's something else to think about. So that's the surprise that many retirees talk about um, when that Medicare comes in. So just so we're clear, there are 4 parts of Medicare. You got Part A, which is hospital insurance. Most of us don't pay a premium for Part A. We pay premiums for Part B, which covers medical services. Okay? Then you have Part C, which is also called Medicare Advantage, and it's offered through private plans such as Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, whatever. Those are for the people who didn't have a pension, right? Didn't have a job that they were still able to get health insurance through. Um, then they didn't have any insurance, or they were on Medicaid, right? They can at that time choose Part C, which is offered through private plans. And then you have Part D. That's what I'm dealing with right now, which covers your prescriptions, covers the prescription drugs. Okay. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is earnings limits while working. Earnings limits while working. And if you collect Social Security benefits before full retirement age and continue to work, remember I said you can continue to work, there are earning limits. And if you earn above those limits, part of your benefit can be temporarily withheld. Not lost, but adjusted. Okay? So keep all of those in mind. Okay? So when people debate 62 or 67 or even 70, what they're really asking is, what can I sustain? What can I sustain? Retirement isn't just about age, it's about health, preparation, and peace. Okay? So this conversation is not meant to scare anyone, by no means. Okay? It's meant to steady you, whether you're close to retirement age or not, just so you will have an awareness. Do your own research by all means, but you will be aware, okay? Now, you may not control policy changes because that happens all the time. You may not control inflation because we all know that happens, but you can control your awareness. You can control your awareness. You can control your preparation. You can control your preparation. And you can choose peace over panic. Peace over panic. So take your time, gather your information. Most importantly, protect your health and make decisions from wisdom, never pressure. Never that. Never pressure. Okay? I enjoyed this conversation. I felt like it was needed, especially since a lot of my listeners are baby boomers, and the last of the baby boomers are turning 62 in 2026. Um, I want my younger audience to equip themselves and not to be ignorant about the information about retirement, to prepare themselves for retirement, because at any time, anything could happen. We can get sick, lose our ability to work, and you need to know the facts. So please, 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 please equip yourself. Take heed to the awareness, okay? And as we close, I want to bid you peace and blessings. I love you guys, and I mean it.